Hello everybody. Today we're going to go over some nuances of the psychedelic experience. This video is going to be proposed from the perspective as if someone were inquiring about the nature of specifically psilocybin magic mushrooms, is what I've had over 100 deep trips with. I'm 19 years old. I've been pursuing these since I was 16, pretty consistently. Most consistent I've ever done is about a pretty heavy dose every 2 weeks for a long time. Like, but I haven't gone a month without dosing mushrooms in, for the most part, in probably getting on 2 years. They're very central to my identity and everything that's important to me and my philosophies and ways of seeing the world and my psychology, and they've completely transformed like everything about me. It's the whole reason really why I made this channel. Is responsible for whenever I speak of spiritual awakening, is really mushrooms. They're what done that. People who know me personally, it's just at the center of my life, and people around me, or there's communities and people of similar nature who know what I'm talking about. Where like say like Terence McKenna, we put the mushroom on such a pedestal because of many reasons. A lot is because it's like literally like the missing link in our culture. A quote from Terence McKenna earlier that I heard today. I was listening to quite a few lectures today while I was at work. I listened to some by Ram Dass about chaos and aging. I listened to Terence McKenna talk a lot about the environment and about psychedelics, and something he said about psychedelics is that basically like those who like the kind of worldview that the world is kind of like boring and everything's been discovered is myopic. And he said like you haven't, like, you need to turn to the dose of mushrooms in your refrigerator or something, basically. Right, I'm gonna spark this now. Hopefully no one, I'm not gonna go into context, but I'm not gonna smoke in here, so please, I know I'm such a cunt, but people just have a problem with having a good time, I swear. People just want to be a sport. It's wholesome, everything's okay. I'm just having one zoo, alright? Sorry. Don't say anything, you fucking twat. Sorry. I mean, let's move on. So, I'm excited. So let's get speaking. So, I guess I may literally just go into random experiences of mine of psychedelics. There are loads of all sorts of strange nuances that I've experienced personally in my years of doing magic mushrooms. And I got a few that could just come off the top of my head. So here's a very interesting one. Oh, this set is actually this exact same set of drawers. You see this texture of wood? Ignore my room. I've had to like fucking organize everything so I could make this camera work on this for this video. But that texture, I was looking at it on mushrooms. I was about to begin meditating. I was actually on LSD as well. I did test the acid, so I took 2 tabs of acid of an unknown dose, and I took about 4 grams of mushrooms. Obviously, viewer discretion advised. Don't do like dumb shit. Synergizing is dangerous potentially. Terence McKenna speaks a lot about the dangers that lie there. But what happened to me basically, this is the first time it ever happened, and once it was evoked, it remained something that I can almost invoke or bring to fruition. Once it first happened, once I made that like neural connection, I guess it kind of, it's like, you know, if you keep traversing a forest, eventually the path will get more easy to traverse, because you're like naturally kind of carve the grass out with your path. So I was staring at these drawers, about to begin meditating, and in an instant, the alphabet spawned in front of me. A, B, C, D, all the way to Z. And I also had the numbers 1 to 9 to 0, the whole spectrum, covering the whole set of drawers, only the drawers, nothing else. And I could see it within the wood texture. Very, very vibrant. They weren't coloured, really. They were like mouldings in the wood, as if it had been dented in the kind of, instead of it being flat, it was like grooved out. The texture it looked like was, if you are familiar with a Ouija board, it's like a bridge, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, blah, 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 like this, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and it was in that kind of, but it was the whole set, and it was kind of breathing and growing. It looked very organic, but it was a very majestic and like divine font. And that was the thing is I wasn't actively thinking or trying to create this. It just appeared, and it's direct evidence of psychedelics revealing the subconscious mind. You can traverse the subconscious mind, especially more in silent darkness. But this is why you can relive memories, relive traumas, or like discover traumas that you wasn't aware of. I had a friend coming down saying that he come down off of like a 3.5, and he thought that he realised that he was molested by his dad when he was younger. I've had realizations where like, I didn't think I had any traumas, but then like it becomes clear in a trip. So something like, let me give you a quick example of a very legitimate. So I had a flat very briefly with my dad, and there was a dog called Chop Chop, and I was abusing mushrooms, and I kind of lost my mind a bit, and everything fell apart, and it was not very good. It wasn't a very it was a very bitter time for me for quite a while, and the jobs I was in and my mental health, and so I had a trip not long ago in silent darkness, and I started thinking about it, and then it just sparked this like breakdown, and I started to like cry, but what this is proving to me is I have trauma that I wasn't like, you hold tears within you, and you can kind of find these like, oh yeah, fuck, I never really dealt with that, while you're in these trances on these high doses especially. And you can really deal with stuff, and then you could be like, well, no wonder I was being so neurotic, because you've got all these like tears that you hold in your body that you can release through breath work and psychedelics. Not that I'm a pro at breath work. I've done the Wim Hof for a few years. I don't do it too much these days, but yeah. So there's that. After that, I got it when I had no acid combination. It was just shrooms. I got it on the leaves on some trees, and I could see it in the grass, the letters and etc. So there's that phenomenon. The next phenomenon we got, I've only ever had this once. The one that I just described, the letters, I've had it about twice, 3 times. This one I've only had once that I'm about to name, and this was on, I believe about 3.5 of Liberty Caps psilocybin magic mushrooms. Liberty Caps is my specialty. That's what I've dosed the vast majority of the time. And so what happened is, everything in my consciousness, my perception, everything metaphysically went under for a millisecond consistently every 20 minutes or so. What do I mean? It's like a heartbeat. It was like a heartbeat that shakes reality to its core. Like everything would literally, like, it was just a normal trip, but there was this weird thing that was happening. It happened maybe 7 times total. Everything like just felt like it went like, but I as if I just left and came straight back again, and it kept happening, and I thought that's really weird, but it was not consistent, and it was quite strange. It was only mushrooms, so and I knew mushrooms a lot, and then one time, the last time it done it, and then it stopped doing it, it done it really fucking hard. Like, I felt it with everything in me. It just shifts gravity or some shit for a millisecond. Yeah, that was truly bad. So that was a pretty short one, but yeah, I don't know what to say about that. I was led in bed for the most part inside the darkness, and yeah, it was just like a weird kind of like pulse a pulse that kind of just went through everything. Uh, Very strange. So something to note is another phenomenon, so the third phenomenon, but it's more of a bigger picture phenomenon. It's not like a one experience. This is basically why people do psychedelics to an extent. Like, I know Terence McKenna, he said that the shamans, so they cure in some sessions, which I assume is purging and or no. I guess it would be doing it to people, like curing, as in like providing the medicine. But regardless, he said that they do curing half the time, but they also have to learn themselves. So what they pursue is understanding. And in Terence McKenna's words, he says it's the same thing that drives the scientist. And this is the core of it for me, for the most part. Leo Gura, a quote I love by him is, "Reality hinges off of understanding." All this like no mind stuff. There's a place for it, but also there's a difference between no mind and God realization and interconnected understanding of nuance and duality and even stuff more on the relative plane. So what do I mean? What's the main point that I'm saying is that psychedelics, very common. Every single trip I've had since I mean, when I was younger, I wasn't. It didn't happen so much because I wasn't programmed to look for it as much because I didn't know as much. I didn't do enough research. Well, but basically, when I started getting into teachings, specifically actualized.org or Leo Gura, when I started to receive teachings that you can have awakenings, so you can have samadhi, or which I had the other day, which is like you basically become the thing you observe, and that it was really cool actually, just to become like an object, or like it sounds. In terms of there's no chatter to the point where when you look at something and it's all that there is. So in that sense, there's no like self behind it because you're purely perceiving something that you basically just merge with it. There's all different nuances. Check out the different facets of 30 facets of awakening by Leo Gura or actualized.org. And then so when I started to understand that I could have deep revelations, they started to happen a lot more. And I would hear videos talk about things. Say I just spoke about samadhi. Maybe you've never heard of that. Well, now that you've heard about it, is much more likely to become actualized. And this is when Leo Gura says like, "Oh, if you don't believe me, just find out for yourself." And it happens. And there's loads of stuff like non-duality and things like that. There's videos of Leo Gura going, like he's just raving on the floor, probably on psychedelics. They're called like real-time awakening, and he's got quite a few of them from different times. And exactly what happened in that video to him happened to fucking me, happened to Sam, who was the person, if you're familiar with my previous podcasts, the one where I talk about an amazing shroom trip when I was at work. Not at work, but I did take shrooms at work one time, but I won't talk about that right now. I got not the job I'm at now. It was a long time ago, but we won't get into that. But I recorded it at work, reflecting on a trip. On my podcast, it's called like Amazing 6 Gram Shroom Trip Report Reflection, and yeah, sorry, I meant if you go to that episode, I refer to this person who was friends with Dylan and who underestimated the shrooms and thought that he had it all figured out when he'd only had one trip under his belt, and I knew that he was going to get taken apart, and he did. But but he also had what I had and what Leo Gura had. And I said to him when he was having it, I said, that video we was watching earlier, that's what's fucking happening to you now. And everyone was like, oh yeah. And I was like, oh, that ain't happened to me. It's weird. I mean, obviously, if you're taking all psychedelics, somewhat get you to the same place. They're all like vehicles, somewhat, to enlightenment and God realization. Or as Alan Watts says, like, Alan Watts has this idea when you get the message put down the phone. And that's what I'm saying about, like, when you use the car to drive to the destination, you don't need the car. When you use the raft to cross the fucking lake, you don't need the raft. You don't carry it around. But I don't know, like, I don't really, like, I don't think, I get it, I get the analogy, but, and I used to almost resonate with when you get the message put down the phone, and he means, like, when the psychedelics tell you what they need to tell you, he's like, stop doing them. But I don't think he really believes that. I could get it to an extent, but it depends what your goal is. But his philosophy is like, do what you want. So, and I like mushrooms, and they're good for my development, and it depends. So I'll tell you something that shrooms do. One second, actually. Yeah. So I was gonna tell you how shrooms are good for development and getting a holistic insight. The way I think about it, here's an analogy that I came up with on my podcast called Friend Asked Me About. He calls to ask about my 70 plus mushroom trips, where he inquires and I educate him on what I know, and we mix perspectives. I come up with the analogy there, how, and I kind of took it from Quadeca. If you know Quadeca's album From Me to You, it's got this philosophical concept that is over the album, which obviously all good albums have that kind of thing. In a way, you can layer concepts and add more depth. But what I'm saying is, when you're kind of sober, you're waking up and you're being productive. You're just going from one thing to the next, projecting into the future. Just keep going. Got to go to work. Got to get rest. Got to get money. Got to go to work. Got to get rest. Got to get money or whatever. And so hello, there was actually a that's just Luna. I won't show you her right now, but you're distracting me. You look so funny, Luna. Maybe I will show you her. Who's that? So there was this like interlude at the end of one of the songs, I think, and this guy, with the metaphor that Quadeca uses, he like the opening track is called Sisyphus. Luna, stop it. Which is basically this like archetype of some guy, and he basically pushes a boulder up a mountain, and like when he gets to the top it just resets, and he just does it for all eternity. And it's an analogy for how humans just kind of progress into the future forever. And it's like, unless you project a meaning onto it, it can seem like nihilistically meaningless. But what I'm saying, the main point, what I was saying with the psychedelics and how they can be good for your development, and like a holistic integration, as one of my recent trip definitely was, is you're always, and this is the analogy that Quadeca uses someone's voice for some interlude at the end of one of his songs in From Me to You, the album. He says, when basically your day to day, it's very difficult for you to get an overall view of where you are. But the let me quote it directly from the metaphor that Quadeca took the snippet from and put into the song. He'll probably do it better justice. He goes like, he's talking about the mountain analogy that the album is based around, and he says, like, basically when you're climbing a mountain, you can't see the whole fucking mountain. You can only see like the next like cliff, the next thing. I've never climbed a fucking mountain, so I don't really know. Or it depends, obviously, the nature of the mountain. He said it's very difficult for you to get an overall view of or picture of where you are. Yeah, but the thing you're missing, Quedeca, even though you did talk about psilocybin on your track Candles on Fire, which I liked very much, and that's why I listened to artists that I knew he took mushrooms before I'd even hear him say it, because I can hear it in certain music. It's interesting how I it's like an intuition. But so the missing link there is, and this is why I say psychedelics are the missing link for like our whole culture, is because we're all stuck in this false summit paradigm. But if we was aware of these superfoods that just have different nuance to them, these hyper superfoods, you could call them, that we've neglected the idea. They're kind of guilty as charged because they cause hallucinations, as Terence McKenna says. If we were to what you'll realize with the use of psychedelics is they give you a holistic, big picture overview, bird's eye view of the mountain, aka the true summit. So when you're only seeing in your linear daily sober life, you can only see these kind of false summits because sobriety is very practical often in the grey day-to-day, as they call it. But psychedelics can take you so far out into breathing, into energy space, that there's a different perspective, and plants are used as tools for altering perspective. You can gain insight as if you were a entity observing yourself from the outside, of that kind of nature, where Terence McKenna, for example, he tells a story. He decided he was going to quit smoking weed because he hadn't drawn an unstoned breath for 24 years or some shit. So he decided he was going to quit weed and he was going to pursue writing a book. So he went to an island, he got writing a book, he quit weed, he wrote the book while he was sober, and then at the end he had a celebratory blunt and smoked some marijuana to celebrate that he finished his book. And then when he smoked it and he got high, as you do, he basically realized that the book that he wrote was hella trash, and he tried to save it, but he couldn't. So plants, fungus, these are foods that have nuance and novelty baked into them. But it's not, you cannot objectively say if they are good or bad. Unless you want to be Leo Gura and say everything is ultimately good, but that's a separate thing. The substance itself can 100% be good, but it's all kind of relative. Good for what? Good for now? What are you trying to do? Maybe they make you realize something that really did help. Or maybe you took them and the butterfly effect caused something good to happen and it was completely irrelevant to the mushrooms. It just so happened to sync time up, and maybe they helped you in some strange loop long way round. So you can't, like, in a way objectively demonize the mushrooms, because they can be used as tools for certain things 100%. If your goal is to, like, enter psychosis or, like, see geometry, go in a trance or go into madness, or then these work for that, and that's objective. So you haven't got to believe anything about them, and this is very critical. Is it doesn't matter what you want to believe about the magic mushrooms. If you take 5 grams of Liberty Cap psilocybin magic mushrooms in silent darkness, you will, I almost fucking guarantee, Why don't you go find out for yourself? I'm not telling you to actually do that, but if you want to challenge, like, but it's objective. It's not like you believe it. It just happens to you, and it's energetic. Terence McKenna says it's a siren that you can hear and feel, and I like that. I like that analogy. It's raving energy at times, full of insights, psychosis, psychotherapeutic breakdowns, realizations, geometry, time, like delineation, like whatever the fuck, where like it slows down, it speeds up, symmetry, nature looks great, awareness is just very different, a lot of pain, often emotional pain, trauma. It's like a whole dimension, is what I'm trying to fucking tell you. And if you've had only a few trips, you haven't really been there. Some people sometimes, like, someone messaged me not long ago, like, oh, bro, I took acid the other... Yeah, it's Brandon... Fuck it, I'll shout him out. Brandon Roberts Fitness on TikTok. I'll link him below. But he took LSD, he said it was like a whole different dimension. And that's... When I hear that, I'm like, maybe we've reached the same sort of thing. Because there's... Oh, I had a trip, like, not even a week ago, and it literally metaphysically just blows a hole in the whole fucking thing. And, like, you can't believe it. It stretches time, it fucking bends everything, and you know things that you can't even think linearly, like, or it seems. Like, even if you, like, say all the stuff that I've had, supposed realizations and awakenings that I referred to earlier, regardless of if they're actually true or if you're deluding yourself or not, you still believe it, so it's basically true for you. And it's very fun to say Conor Murphy, say if he is crazy after all and he's full of shit about, like, supposedly if that was a possibility, which it is not, but it is also at the same time. It doesn't matter if he's right or wrong. But another objective truth that we're trying to get to, because these are very important, we're trying to clear up what exactly these are, so that's why we have to talk precisely. So regardless if you want to believe in it or not, psychedelics tend to potentially create Murphanity, or Conor Murphanity, or Conor Murphy clinical insanity. Or spiritual psychosis, or states of madness, and they do this, and it doesn't matter again what you want to believe about it. Like, there's a story on YouTube, I'll link it below, called this girl, she's very good actually, I like her channel, very interesting. The video is titled "I Tried DMT, It Was Hell," and she took it on a whim. She didn't really know what it was, with some friends who said it would be really cool. Someone tried it, they started crying, and she thought, like, oh, this is interesting. She was quite young. She took it and she just got, like, dragged down by loads of, like, demon hands, and it was, like, traumatizing. So that's what I'm saying. It's like, it is impossible still, as far as you're aware. Like, it's nothing that you've ever experienced, and it doesn't matter what belief system you come into it with, it will still show you, like the world like you've never seen it. So what are you gonna say about that? You can't, like, that's what it does. And they're like, I bet it will do that. Like, it will fuck with your brain. Like, you think, oh, well, I'm gonna take this, what? And apparently I'm gonna, like, lose the plot. You think, oh, whatever. How's it gonna do that? I'm just sat here on this chair. What's this mushroom gonna do? Watch what fucking happens. Terence McKenna says it's one thing to say that it's just a drug that's causing reactions in the brain, but it's another thing to say that it will put what was it? Drop a heavy hand on your shoulder and go, son, me and you got some things that we need to, like, that. Basically, it's like it takes you on a journey through the skeletons in your closet. And think about how emotional that is. Like, you fucking, like I said with the thing earlier with my flat, like, It's all sorts of things in there, and no two trips are the same. It's not like these stimulants. It's like organic, and it hyperconnects your brain. Look at the fucking brain scans. In short, quickly, the brain scan is basically this is basically the myth of apparently there's only 20. We only use 20% of your brain. Well, when you look at the brain scans under psilocybin and LSD and maybe DMT, I'm not sure. I'm sure ayahuasca, they all take you to the same place. It hyperconnects the brain when normally it's only like connected like 20% maybe. It looks like under the brain scans that it is super hyper connected to. That's why under the influence of ayahuasca you can see music. And Terence McKenna speaks of how certain frequencies create the same visual representation of that frequency amongst groups. If this is the case, I feel like we need to actually like conduct like a full-blown scientific experiment on that. Like, what the fuck? Or like, you know what I mean? Like some double-blind madness. So it's like, hold on a second. Do signs actually correlate to a like objective shared experience of the same visual representation correlation? Like, does it actually have a fundamental correlation under the influence of orally activated DMT? Because if it does, that's interesting. Maybe we can like reverse engineer that in a way as well, where we can make, because this is Terence McKenna's he wants to evolve language, and this might be it, because he talks a lot about this. So if you could reverse engineer it, if here we go, here could be potentially live groundbreaking. I've finally done it with my joint and my mushroom tapestries. Here's the breakthrough. If audio has a objective, also known as a shared, everyone's subjective experience is identical under the influence of this ayahuasca orally activated dimethyltryptamine, N-dimethyltryptamine, if it has a fundamental correlation to a sound, as Terence McKenna proposes, music, people criticize songs and go, oh, I like the bit with the blue ribbons over the like green whatever, but I thought the bit with the orange fucking spiky thing was a bit too far-fetched. And he goes, well, what kind of a critique of a song is this? I mean, so what I'm saying is, if there is a fundamental correlation between audio, so this would be a exact objective visual correlation to that sound, could you not then reverse engineer that, and instead of producing sound and converting it to image, you could learn it in a reverse engineer way, and then you could learn to speak visually with a sound correlation, and this would be able to make you have a, in the same way that we match meaning onto words. These words are fundamentally abstract and meaningless, but because of our minds and our brains and our intelligence, we project meaning. Because if I start speaking Russian, which I cannot, and if you want to do a deep dive on this exact point, check out actualize.org or Leo Gura, The Illusory Nature of Thought. Alan Watts speaks a lot about this as well, and it's how symbols are projections, how these letters, all context is a projection. I done live meditations about a year ago, and I had like a kind of breakthrough about that, actually, how like you could, on one level you create reality because you project onto visuals. So hold on. But visual language already exists because It's right here. Right, okay. But that isn't anything to do with sound. Because that is a visual representation of pronunciations that holistically I can convert with my dictionary into audio, which I can also understand regardless of visuals. So I can understand this with my eyes closed. Okay? But could I understand language visually with an objective correlation with the exact sound? So there's no projection of the meaning onto the qualia, also known as sense perception. Probably not. Unless you just see a dog in the wilderness, and I guess that's his own form of language because you directly understand it. Well, actually, I had a breakthrough once where a wall. This is actually very relevant to this video, so it's very good that it came up. I was just tripping in a trance, and then, bang! My whole visual field was like had like an alien on it, but it was just like loads of like orbs that were like looked like it was on a screen, and it was a square of of like of it was in a grid, but it was like organically like but I swear the more I looked at it, like the more I understood it, but I couldn't tell you it, but I could understand it directly. And obviously Terence McKenna talks about this. I guess it's the only time. What did I say? Yeah, I guess I was waiting to meet an alien for ages. That was very rare. I have not had that since. But yeah, that was very interesting. But what was I understanding there? But if I did create... Well, the thing is, there are objective correlations to sound. Because you can find videos of them on YouTube. Where frequencies create geometry. With sand on vibrating plates, etc. And with like these green radar looking screens that convert frequencies in some strange way. So is that not a visual? But if you spoke into it, you couldn't understand it with your ears plugged, could you? The same way I said as your eyes closed with the thing, with the visual representation. No. Why not? Because I haven't studied it thoroughly enough. If I were to study the direct correlation to sound, as in when I spoke now, I was staring at the direct visual representation of this sound, then technically I could go deaf and dumb and lose my ability to speak. No, I could go deaf to the point where I could not hear myself talk anymore. And that could have me at risk of going what they call deaf and dumb, supposedly, where you because you can't hear you or anyone speaking, you lose the ability to speak with detailed pronunciation. You get blah, 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 sound a bit dumb. But if I could directly learn the correlation between objective audio and the direct objective visual representation of that, then when my hearing goes, I can still understand through what I've learned the detail of each frequency and nuance within my speech, because there's a direct representation that doesn't require me to hear. Therefore, if I lost my hearing, I would not fear not hearing myself, or I could still feel the audio, but as I cannot take any audio in anymore, I could still have a direct representation that is as feelable, but with a different sense dimension. So I could feel and articulate, and my vocal range would be radically expanded if I could see it represented in at least the visual dimension if I lost this dimension. Maybe I'm onto something, or maybe I'm chatting pure shit. Is there any implications for this in the without going deaf? Therefore, I could learn this direct visual representation of audio through objective means, through some like direct conversion, through some machine or instrument, where I could learn it so thoroughly that I could, especially potentially, if I was good at visualization, if I didn't suffer from the thing that supposedly makes you not be able to do that, like Greg on the telly or Me Gangster. Especially under the influence of psychedelics, if I could get into a more like a visionary state, or even maybe when I'm sober, technically, if I had learned the direct conversion of audio to visual in the exact frequency, like match, if such a thing exists, which I'm pretty fucking confident there is because I've seen it, then shouldn't I be able to speak with my eyes closed and project and visualize what that would look like directly with geometry? As geometry, I believe, has a fundamental correlation to frequency, as many of us are familiar with. So, could I not then theoretically reverse engineer that and fuck the audio? Because I don't have to convert the audio into the image in order to understand it, but I can. But once I learn that thoroughly enough, surely I could speak in the visual dimension that I converted the audio to within my mind's eye, or my imagination, or my visual projection within. Because we can do this. I can imagine somebody stood there right now, but there isn't, in this weird like ghost mode, you know what I mean? So surely I could do that, and I could understand it just as directly. So what I've just done in this video is I invented a brand new way of communicating, at least with yourself. So in your mind's eye, once you've learned the direct visual representation of the audio, I discovered this in real time while I was filming, then therefore I could then articulate and think about reality. I can think with visuals. I've just invented a new way of thinking, a new way of language. We think in words and sound, right? So if we think in words and sound, this is what we're familiar with. The internal dialogue is what we call thoughts. Okay. Well, why can that internal dialogue not be visual? I could likely think in sentences visually, but perhaps that's not as organic and intuitive as the geometry or the direct correlation. Or maybe we could integrate the best of both worlds. So in conclusion, if audio has a direct, objective correlation exactly to the frequency and the sound, if there's an exact visual representation of every sound in the present moment frequency, whether it's in geometry or who knows, which it is if you look at the sand plates vibrating with sand or water, look at the water under different frequencies, and it gets deep into how how you can listen to them healing frequencies on the phone or whatever helps you go to sleep. But keep it away because of the EMF radiation. Then we could learn it so deeply that we could reverse engineer it, and we could learn to recognize the meaning of our words and what we could articulate in audio. But if it had a direct match in the visual dimension, then we could understand through these patterns directly, and therefore you should be able to talk to yourself and understand reality and contemplate visually. And if you can do that, is this not a new dimension of thought? And if that is the case, that is the pinnacle of novelty, and will change the name of the game, as it may have a different nature of how it goes down. Will it? That was a fucking rant and a half. That is I hope that that's a decent idea. But I'm gonna have to be the guy who does it. I've learned Rubik's Cubes before. I could do them in under 30 seconds, so I feel like I could fucking do that if that's possible. So that I don't have to think in this projection of audio, because that's what we do. We talk to ourselves in this kind of like weird ghost version of audio. It's not real qualia, it's like a projection of qualia. Qualia means sense perception. It's like a fake sense perception that you can project. So if I could do that in the audio dimension, why could I not do that in the visual dimension? That's a very good question. If I could project meaning onto these visuals, why? If language exists visually and audibly, why do I think in the audio dimension? Why do I not think in the visual dimension? Can I do that? Why not? Are there other dimensions of potential thought? See, this is why people don't want to fuck with philosophy, but when you do it, or deep metaphysics and psychedelics, there's these very like fundamental tweaks to the BIOS, to the operating system, that if you can like peel back the layers and like overthink so much and contemplate and like observing, that eventually it's like you break reality. And I study and think about this non-stop. That's why I've been talking for 50 minutes about this shit. You know what I mean? And then everyone around me just wants me to stop, like, kind of, like, I don't know. This whole culture just hates on psychedelics. Well, the system does anyway, but the mass awakening's taking place. Grime MCs are still making pop tunes. You egotistical MCs, stop pretending like wearing costumes. I shower down lyrics like hailstones. I shower down lyrics like monsoons. I leave MCs with frail molds and make their soul float off like bomb fumes. Be aware, don't get brainwashed, don't be sucked in by celebrityism. It's all fake, it's evil, demonic. They want to see hate and jealousy in them. It's negative energy with them, they're definitely telling me, begging me, listen. Do research and wake up now, because the truth and remedies heavily hidden. Don't just believe my words, find out for yourself, researching's easy. Honestly, trust me, believe me, blood, there's never no truth on TV. This mass awakening's taking place, and I told you once on a Wake Up EP, don't be horrible, don't be angry, don't be jealous, and don't be greedy. Show some forgiveness, show some love, humanity's equal, show compassion. Material stuff don't make you happy, that's just a myth like ghosts and dragons. There's more to life than currency, there's more to life than stacks and paper. Please wake up, please don't be a sheep. Turn off your TV, go back to nature. That is Verbal GBH3 by Mr. Traumatic, I believe. I have been OXSN or Baron Davidson. Thank you for watching.